good afternoon. We're going to change up the Chazarah a little bit, as in Mirz Hashem. There's not going to be a shir tonight, so we said we're going to do a Chazarah of the whole blot from Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, the Mishnah, all the way to the Mishnah Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. So for that reason, we're going to post this as a video, which hopefully will help one who needs a little bit more of a push to, to do the Chazarah. Why me sitting and screaming at the screen makes it easier to Chazarah? I don't know. I guess it's just the way that it works sometimes. So let's pick it up from the Mishnah. Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. The Mishnah. If someone lowers onto his sukkah the grapevine, the gourd vine, or the branches, and he puts his chach on Davib Psula, then the sukkah is apostle. Why is the sukkah apostle? Because these chach are apostle. But if there's more kosher chach, then it's kosher. Why? Because of bittul. Or you cut it off kshira, it's going to be kshira. Ze'aklal. And what is the rule of schach? Then misach gimbay. And again, just a quick plea that please let's try to do Chazarah by reading. Yes, I appreciate and I love when people listen to the shirim, but we all know the Kinyan model, and we all know ourselves that when we read the Gemara and we're able to read the Gemara, that really makes a life of a difference. So let's try b'siyata d'shemaya to focus on the reading, which is so critically important. We pick it up from the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Yosef Rav is coming to Rav Huna Yosef Kamar, Yishek Sasing Sheira, that, or if you cut it, it's going to be kosher. Ve'amar Rav, and on this day you got to cut off the schach. Says Rav, Sarich Linnaneya, you have to shake the schach. It's not enough to cut it off. You have to actually shake the schach, because if not, you have a problem of Ta'asev Eloi Mina Asui. This schach was placed down when they were apostle, and now you just cut it off. How is it going to be kosher? Says Rav, you have to shake the schach. Now, obviously, we know the end of the story, that there's going to be a big machlaik as whether the ksisas and the cutting is the asiyas and is the creation of the schach. But let's get there. So says the Rav, you have to shake it. I'm the Rav Huna Shmuel Amra. You tell me Rav said it? Shmuel says it. Rav Yosef turns away his head. He wasn't happy with what he said. Did I ever tell you that Shmuel didn't say it? Amra Rav, Amra Shmuel. They both said it. Amra Lei. Excuse me. Yeah. Amra Lei Ravuna. This is what I meant to say. To Shmuel Amra v'loi Rav. That only Shmuel is he that holds that you have to shake it. It's not enough to just cut it off, and not Rav. The Rav Rav says it's kosher without shaking it. The other Rav Amr Chasida, Rabbi Techelta Lefruza Dinsha Beisa, he put the techelas on the corner of his wife's garment. Of course, going to opinion of Laila is Zaman Tzitzis, going to opinion that woman could wear tzitzis, which of course is not the psak nowadays. But Tala'an, he hung it without cutting the ends of them. They were all one big strand. Cut it off, and it is kosher. And what do we see? We see the cutting of the strings, making it into individual strands, is considered the asiyah, the creation of the tzitzis achanami. So too over there, the ksiyasan and the cutting of the schach is zui asiyasan. So says the Gemara, Rav is not holding you have to shake it. Rather, Rav holds it is enough to do what? Merely cut it off. The cutting is the asiyah. Asks the Gemara 6 lines to the bottom, is over Shmuel. I mean, if to do asiyasan, does Shmuel disagree? You put the tzitzis to 2 corners of the beged one time, and afterwards you cut it off. My love, first you tie the tzitzis, and then so see that Shmuel agrees that the cutting is the creation. You cut it and then you tied it. Says remember what's the chiddush? That's pashut. Says the Gemara, we turn over to Yud Aleph Amid Beis, meaning kanaf. It's just still that when you hang it, it has to be up kanaf, and it can't be over 2 corners. Veleka kamashlan, that is the chiddush. May say another kasha if you hung it without cutting off the end, and psulin, it's possible. My love says more psulin ilam, that is possible forever. Utiyofta the Rav, and therefore it's going to be a big kasha on Rav. Amr l'chai Rav, no. My psulin ad sheyifsiku, says Rav. No, it's only possible until you cut it. But of course, if you cut it, says Rav, it's going to be kasha. Why? Because Rav is of the opinion that the psikasa, the ksisasan, the cutting is the creation. Shmuel Amr, no psulin ilam. Shmuel holds sarich l'naneas. Shmuel holds you have to actually do a ma'isa. The cutting is not enough, which of course we know is the psak halacha. Really, to say it more clearly, is just a semantical machlekes, whether it's a psak like Rav or Shmuel. But we know that the halacha is that you actually have to shake it, that cutting it is not enough, and without it, psulim. Another kasha, you hung it and then you cut it. Psulim. So we see straight up in the Braisa that if you hung it and then you cut it, it's going to be basal. Another kasha, what do we see? We see that cutting it is not enough. Second kasha, says the Braisa, if it was created by pasul, it's not enough. You have to be created with kashas. Mikan omru, from here we see what? The din of our Mishnah. Hidzla, if you hung it a last again, it's last as a key. Hey, Chidami, what is the case of this price? Elim, if you're going to tell me Mishla Kasan, you can cut it off my rim, you should go Taslam and Asui. It's possible because it's still attached to the tree. Ella Bishek Sasan must be that you cut it off. We see it's possible Shamin Adla, meaning Sasan, we ask Yasan, Utiofta, De Rav, and Kasha and Rav. Rav answers that you pulled it off the tree, and therefore Rav says a chiddush. Rav says really when you cut it is the asiyah. So really there should be no problem with pulling the branch off the tree because the pulling it off is the creation. It says Rav there's a different issue. It's not minkar, it's not recognizable because you can't tell the point where the branch is disentangled from the tree. Says the Gemara, Kasha the Rav. The first price is Kasha the Rav, and says the Gemara Kasha, and that's really how we end off. And we have a machlekes. Rav is seemingly a kasha, and Shmuel holds that it's not enough, and that is the psak again. That of course you have to shake the schach. That if you have one of these permanent schach situations, or a schach that's up year to year, scarlet and whatnot, what do you have to do? You have to shake, pick up, and put down the schach. Says Gemara Lema Ketana. Let's say this machlekes Rav Shmuel whether ksiyasan zui asiyasan. Whether the cutting is the creation is a machlekes. Says the Braisa. There's a din in the Mishnah Daf Lamed Beis. You're not allowed to have more berries than leaves in your adasin, and you're not allowed to pick off the berries in Yontif. What happens? Over Veliktam says the Braisa, you picked up the berries in Yontif. Apostle did Rav Shimon Yitzchak. The Chum say it's kosher. Savru, they thought the Kli Amil. Everyone holds lulav sarach agad. Everyone holds you have to bind the dalin and mean together lulav adasin or ravas. And everyone knows you have lulav misaka. You have to learn how lulav misaka that what the my lab that everyone holds by lulav as well. Taslim and also has to be created big kashrus. So what's the machlekes? There's something in the Chachamim says Gemara my lab al kamivligi. Demand the machshas of Armini Gabi Sukkah says to asiyas. The one holds its kashrus says by Sukkah we hold the cutting is the asiyah. V'gabi lulav nami Armini likitas to asiyasan. So by the lulav the knocking off those berries is the creation of the hadas. Now you have it created, therefore it's going to be kosher. Says Rav Shimon, says the Chachamim. Uman the apostle or Shimon Yisadik. What is he also? So says the Gemara. The machlekes Rav and Shmuel is seemingly a machlekes of Shimon Yisadik and the Chachamim. Says the Gemara loy, and of course to point out there are three variables here. There's number one, whether you need agad. Number two, whether you learn lulav meisukah bataslam and also. And number three, whether ksiyasin zuyasiyasin. So the Gemara thought that these two variables everyone held of, and it's the third variable whether Siyasan Zuyasiyasan is the machlekes, and that's the machlekes tonight. Answers Gemara Loi. The other two variables is the machlekes. The Kuli Amalab and Siyasan Zuyasiyasan. Everyone agrees you can't just cut it off. Machlekes is there a din of Tasl Minas Lula Man the Machtav Leif and Lula Misika Man the Basal Veil Vino Lula Misika. Viva Yisema. Second teretz. Isfir Landulav Sarach Agad. If you have to bind the Kuli Amalai Pligi, no one argues Alfin Lula Misika. Oh, that is in a Tasl Minas. What's the machlekes? Marsav Sarach Agad Marsavar. Ein Sarach Agad. Beautiful. Uplukta Dahani Tanai. And says the Gemara, this indeed is a different machlekes Tanaim. The Tani we learned to the right. So lulav bein agad bein shana agad with regard to the egud of the lulav, that itself is a machlekes kosher. Rav Yehuda Amer, no. If it's agad, it's kosher. Shein agad apostle. Tani Tama holds it's kosher without being agad. Rav Yehuda holds no. Says the Gemara, my time to Rav Yehuda. Lulav likich chamei gudas ezoiv. Ksiv awesome. It says when you have to paint the doorpost, and we said ezoiv is also by the parah duma. But here this is by painting the doorpost of the Pesach, Karban Pesach in Mitzrayim. That it says over there, lakachtam gudas ezoiv. You have to take a bundle of the ezoiv. The hissa. It has to be bound. They disagree about the machlekes. And we conclude this part. The lulav The mitzvah is to bind it. If you don't do it kosher, it's kosher. Rav Yehuda, my kosher. Rabbanan my mitzvah. They hold you don't even need to do it. So says the Gemara, no, the Rabbanan really are masking it's a mitzvah. They said you could do it or not do it. But the Rabbanan hold it's a different type of mitzvah. Mishum shenemar zakili van ve'u esnor lefanav b'mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah on the lulav that it needs agad, but it's a mitzvah on the hider lulav esnor lefanav b'mitzvahs. And now part 2 of today's share, we're going to conclude 5 lines into the Y lines of the Alpha and Beis of the 2 dots with what are the dinim of the Succah Chazarah Klal 7 Mishnah. Immediately, what is the mekar that your Succah has to be detached from the ground, grown from the ground, and something which is mekabel tama amri yishlag shamar kra veid yalem min haaretz, says the pasuk in the cloud ascended. Excuse me, I said it wrong. Has to be einay mekabel tama, and has to be gedulim min haaretz. I apologize. Zeh cloud that what id yalem min haaretz, the cloud ascended from the ground. Ma'id, just like the cloud, the mist is davar shenim mekabel tama gedulim min haaretz. Sukkah davar shenim mekabel tama gedulim min haaretz. That's the makar that in Mitzrayim, in the Midbar, they had the Anani HaKavod which surrounded them. That was the Sukkah. The Anani HaKavod were clouds, were Eid, were mist. Were Einam HaKabel Tom, were Gedulim and Haaretz. So that's what we see. All Succah has to be such. Says the Gemara, but this itself is a machlekes. Which this is a brayz that keeps looking at the Nisa Anani HaKavod. You did the answer of Kimar Mesikus Mamish Lehem. So Anichel Rav Lazar, it's good. Rav Kim Michael Meimar. Succah Chazarah Rav Dim Yamar Rav Yechlan. Second attempt at the makar for the Succah needing to be in a makabel toma gedulim in haaretz. Amar kro chaga sukkah sas l'cha makar sukkah l'chagiga machiga davar shenim makabel toma gedulim in haaretz. After davar shenim makatova gedulim in haaretz. Learn it out from the carbon chagiga. Says the Gemara on the top of your Beis and Alpha. 1 second, imach chagiga bali chayim. Afsukkah nami bali chayim. You're telling me you have to cover your sukkah with bali chayim. So what exactly is the kasha? Is not clear in Rashi, but we said last night. That's where Tva explains. What do you mean? But high to Irais is bali chayim, and that is mekabel tomos. That'd be a problem. So Kiyasa Rav in attempt number 3 on Rav Yechlan Amar Krav, it says about the Succah, about the sukkah basachah megarncham yikvech. B'psailes, the refuse of Garn V'Yakev, of the greenery and the wine vat that goes to Midaber. So that's what we see. That's it's the vines and it's the branches. That has to be used as your Succah. Says more. 1 second. Maybe the Garn not so V'Yakev. So maybe you have to use the actual wine, the actual grain. Amar Rav Zir Yakev Ksiv Kan. It has to be the actual wine. So it can't be the barrel. The Efshel Esachich one. You can't obviously put wine as your Succah because wine does not stay up on a roof. Masler Rav Yirmiyah. How do you know? Interesting. Kasha Maybe it's congealed wine above me Shinir. Shinar, Shudamali Gulei Tvila, which is like cakes of figs, and therefore there were this congealed wine. Maybe that has to be your Succah. So Amar Rav Zera new Mekar, Amilsu, but the Adon says Rav Zera, I had a Mekar, Vasar Rav Yimi Vishadu Narga, and threw an arrow at it. So Rav Ashi Amar, you know what the Mekar is? Mi Garnachavala Garnatza, Me Yikvach Kavatsu, and that is Mekar number 1. Me Garnacha, Me Yikvach, and that has to be your Succah. Rav Chiz Tamar Meacha Mekar number 2, say Arva Hivyo Alai Zaizali eats Shemin Vali Yadas Vali Tamaros Vali eats Avois. Says the Gemara, these are the items we use as your Succah, different branches. Ask the Gemara almost parenthetically, I know Adas, I know it's obviously the same item. I'm Rav Chisda, Adas Shaita L'Sukkah. Adas Shaita, deranged Adas, that the leaves are not in a perfect 3-prong. That's for the Sukkah, but Eitz Avos is for the Lulav when it's bound 3 together. Chaver, let's try to do an amazing Chazarah. B'siyata D'Shmaya, B'chazik Meir, and we'll see you tomorrow night, Daf Yud Beis at the Mishnah, B'siyata D'Shmaya.